politisée, elle n'est souvent pas considérée comme telle. Pourquoi? Il y a bien souvent un amalgame qui se fait avec Arel Malak. L'association du groupe avec la famille Arel reste très forte. Le fait qu'elle soit un des plus gros propriétaires terriens du pays et qu'elle soit cotée en bourse sous la rubrique sucre n'aide pas non plus. Les investisseurs ne s'y retrouvent pas, ils ne comprennent pas. Et c'est un peu normal, parce que le nom que nous portons a une connotation on ne peut plus familiale, alors que la compagnie que nous sommes devenus aujourd'hui se veut publique. Donc, notre nom aujourd'hui dit effectivement le contraire de ce que nous sommes devenus. Et donc la conclusion, c'est qu'il nous fallait changer d'identité. Jamais une conclusion ne s'est imposée aussi clairement que ça. Et c'est ainsi, je dois vous dire avec un peu de mélancolie, il faut le dire, que nous nous sommes résolus de nous mettre en quête d'une nouvelle identité, plus compatible avec notre statut actuel, mieux adapté à nos ambitions futures, un nom moderne, international, et qui permette de nous ouvrir à de nouveaux horizons. Tout ça c'est très bien, mais comment s'y prendre? Eh bien, sur les conseils de Blast, nos consultants en communication, nous avons décidé de nous soumettre à un exercice de rebranding. Et pour ce faire, nous avons choisi la firme Luxury Branding, dont le CEO est M. Pierre Schmidt. Comme il vous le dira lui-même dans quelques minutes, l'exercice de rebranding ne se cantonne pas simplement à la recherche d'un nom. Il vise plutôt à rechercher en profondeur les valeurs qui sont propres au groupe, ce qui a fait son histoire et sa substance, ce qui unit ces différentes composantes. Tout ceci se traduit en un nom qui lui-même se veut être fédérateur pour tous les différents stakeholders du groupe. Mais je ne vous en dirai pas plus. Cette tâche incombe à M. Schmidt. Mais qui est M. Schmidt? Vous devez dire, ce fameux M. Schmidt. Je vais le laisser se présenter lui-même, c'est un grand garçon, mais sachez seulement qu'il est connu mondialement pour avoir travaillé entre autres sur des projets comme le One and Only, que vous connaissez tous, British Airways. Il est amoureux en ce moment sur un autre projet dont il vous parlera. Mesdames et messieurs, sans vouloir influencer vos réactions à la présentation des pièces, je voudrais quand même vous dire que je suis personnellement très fier du résultat de ce rebranding, bien que je dois avouer qu'au début de l'exercice, j'avais de grosses appréhensions, parce que changer de nom après 175 ans, c'est assez lourd émotionnellement. On a du mal à se détacher de notre passé. Mais enfin, nous avons fait le pas, et aujourd'hui, nous sommes déjà, chez Arel Frères, pleinement imprégnés de notre nouvelle identité. Je laisse à Pierce le soin de vous la faire découvrir. Je vous remercie. Et Pierce, the floor is yours, my friend.
Indeed, it's not an exercise in a new logo, a new name, and a new colour palette. Yes, you will see those. But beneath that sits true identity, resting in a deeply rooted ideology. And then finally, of course, will come the reveal, the moment to show for the first time the new Harold Fair. We begin these processes of determining a new identity with an undertaking that we call discovery. Because quite simply, we go out, and we listen, and we look, and we try to learn. Through a process of discussions, what we call soundings with the key stakeholders, we try to find out what it is that makes a company different and special. The greatest nightmare I have in working with clients is that you find nothing. That there is indeed nothing that makes them different and special, that sets them apart. But no such problem here. We consulted with 34 senior managers across the group. And one of the key themes you'll hear from me this morning is how we try to develop an identity that enables this great group to be more than the sum of its parts, to enable that whole to add up to more than the value of those subsidiaries. And so that is why we consulted so broadly across all of the subsidiary business units. But of course it's very dangerous to try to develop an identity by staring at oneself in the mirror. And so we contrast those internal opinions with a number of key soundings taken in the outside world. Indeed, it may be some of your colleagues that we consulted with in the media. Certainly spoke to several prominent editors, but also people on the stock exchange, people in investment funds, other shareholders, NGOs, members of governments and so on, to try to understand from their perspective how Harald Frere is perceived. And then we spent a little bit of time, of course, looking at the market and the competitors. Although it's notable from my perspective as an outsider how the competitors or the peers within Mauritius tend to congregate in a very similar territory. One thing I was very clear about, having met this company, was actually how different it was. And how I was determined that when we created a new identity, that identity should reflect that difference. Look at GML, IBL, ENL, CIEL. It seemed to me this would be the quickest fee I'd ever earned. Surely it would just be HFL. But no, that wouldn't actually indicate the true difference of this company. And in summary, what we discovered, if I distill it down to just 2 slides, so I know you'll be impatient to get away to the next meeting. What we learned was this was a company with incredibly deep and strong roots. That those roots were sound and provided great stability to this group. That they penetrated deep into the land, into the ground, and drew enormous nutrition from that. But there was a corollary to that strength, which actually could be expressed as a weakness. Despite the deep-rootedness of the group, perhaps the growth in revenues, the growth in activities have been a little sluggish. There are a number of factors attendant upon 10 key strengths that we identified that are actually pulling the group back. And a lot of the discussion in the last 6 months with the ExCom, with the board of directors, has been how we can address those issues and release the energy that those deep roots provide the group to propel future growth. And then, of course, there was the question of the name. Very often we get asked as consultants to provide an independent view on the validity or the appropriateness of the name. In this instance, the board of directors had already determined that it was time to move on. That after 173 years, Harald Frere was no longer the most appropriate moniker for the future of this group. But we were determined to validate that assumption. We asked all 48 people with whom we spoke what was their opinion of the name. And I was astonished that some 97% of those that we surveyed said yes, it is indeed time to move on from the name. And these are just some of the comments that we received. People spoke, as Cyril has mentioned, about the confusion with Harald. But perhaps more worrying, we start to understand some of the reasons for this limitation in growth, this sluggishness, because people perceived the company, despite it being public, despite it having broadened its shareholder register, as being a club. Clubs are out today. The modern economy has no room for old school tie and clubbishness. People spoke about it being old-fashioned. Yes, there are good things from our past, equities to bring forward. You've got to be about the Mauritius of today. You've got to be about the economy of today. They need to get with the times, one analyst told us. Another said they belong to a different era. And that really represents a lot of the barrier that we we were trying to overcome in moving forward into the future. Look at that last comment there about being socially unacceptable. No enterprise today can operate with no reference to its social environment. And Harold Frey is no different. And actually, it is operating with reference to its social environment, but its name was giving people the illusion that it was not. So in summary, we identified the need for a transition. A transition from a company that is today highly reputable, but over which there were questions around its relevance. You know, there's an old adage in the investment community that past performance is no guarantee of future results. We always see that as the caveat, don't we, on investment products. And it's exactly the same with the earnings stream of a company. Reputation, no matter how hard it was won, is not a guarantee of relevance either today or tomorrow. So this entire assignment has been about packaging up and retaining the very best that those deep roots have provided, but ensuring that they're positioned in a relevant way for today and for tomorrow. I think it was summarized brilliantly by one observer who described Harold Frey as a group from the 19th century, but questioned whether they are a group of the 21st. And I think Cyril and his managers here are hugely conscious of the responsibility of ensuring that relevance. Now, why does this all matter to me when we're trying to define a name and a brand for an organization? Well, as I've said, because it is so much more than a name and a logo. It is, in fact, your identity, your DNA, your self made visible to your own people, and importantly, all of your external stakeholders. And that identity is about being rooted in an ideology. It's about having a strategy. And just like an iceberg, where the vast majority of it lies beneath the waterline, and the visible part is the name, the symbol, and the logo, we had to get these things in place first. We had to make sure there was an ideology, that the people working in the mill and the distillery, people working with Berlin in the property development company, that they actually were part of a family. Not a family called Harel, but a group family, shared the same DNA. So we gathered together, and I think this would be maybe a first in Mauritius, on Sunday in early June at L'Aventure de Surfer, 45 of the senior managers of the group. It was actually only the second time in the history of the group all of these people had come together as one and saw for themselves, without very much encouragement, how much they had in common. And we worked together that day to describe a vision, to determine a purpose, and to identify our shared values, values that would unite us despite the business unit within which we operated each day. Remember again, the objective here being to make sure that this lot add up to more than the sum of their parts. So as I say, we worked to describe the vision, to determine within that context our purpose, and to identify the values that we shared. And it was remarkable what happened that morning. There were people there meeting each other for the first time. They'd spoken on email, they'd spoken on the phone. They didn't really realize they were part of this one group. We asked people to share their vision of the future. By the end of the day, we had something remarkably inspiring. We saw a world in which development is sustainable. That's not an objective for us. It's not what we're trying to do, but it's what we saw as a group of managers. It's what we imagined. It's a vision. It's what we see when we look ahead. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there could be a world in which development, in which we're all involved, was done sustainably? It's done in a way that, yes, met our needs today, but done in a way that ensured that the needs of our children will be met tomorrow. And that's what struck me about this group when I met it, was its long-termism. It's such a relief working for a company in this environment. In America and Europe, we're driven by quarterly earnings, maximizing earnings. It's terrible leading a company in those environments. It's very difficult to think beyond the year, sometimes even the quarter. So to find a company with this long-term horizon was phenomenal. And I thought really underpinned this belief in developing sustainably. So we alone can't bring that about. That's not the point of a vision. The point of a vision is to inspire us. But what we can do is choose our own contribution to that. How are we going to help? What is our raison d'être? What role are we going to play in helping that vision come closer. And what the leadership group did, again very quickly, was determine that because we want a world in which development is sustainable, our purpose will be to cultivate resources for a better future. That's actually what we get up in the morning for. And whether those resources are the canes that grow in the fields, or whether they're the salt that we crush, or whether they're the brands that we develop, or whether it's the cash on the balance sheet that we apply to investments. They're all different types of resource that we, this group, cultivate to create a better future for ourselves, for our shareholders, for our employees, and hopefully for the community at large. So as you've heard Cyril say, there's a proposal to relist the share as an investment share, to take it away from being a sugar share. But actually, despite the fact that the group is today already involved in other businesses, energy, consumer brands, property, telecoms and other things, it's going to continue diversifying. And yet the beautiful thing is that the approach behind all of that diversification will remain the same. It will fundamentally be about cultivation. Cultivating assets, sowing, nurturing growth, and cultivating all of that with an investment vision, a special approach to cultivation, and a long-term horizon. Those are the factors that set apart Harold Frere, that do indeed make it different and special. And so we come to the values that again came from the individuals. Every single one of those 45 shared with us, in quite a personal moment, their personal values. And from that we consolidated and clustered and arrived at a set of values that the whole group could get behind and believe in. They believe in integrity, which in Harold Frere means that we will deal with transparency, we will earn the trust of others, and the sincerity that we promote will actually be rooted in truth. So transparency, trust and truth, bringing real quality and flavour to integrity. Of course, many companies say integrity, don't they? We're familiar with that. But what's important is that those 3 T's define it inside Harold Frere. Respect is about personally accepting responsibility, fostering good relations by being more open communicators. One of the criticisms we learned by Tilton Smith 48 is that Harold Frere was poor at communicating. He was shy, he didn't like talking. So meetings like these and more that will come are about opening up, having a story to tell and being proud of it, building a rapport by communicating more openly. Tenacity takes that, doesn't it, to succeed in today's business environment. So we aspire to excellence, but as a minimum, professionalism is what we seek. And we're going to reward perseverance amongst our people, because we know that to reach that excellence requires great patience. It's a group of great passion. When we brought those 45 together, it was like a release of energy. It was marvellous to behold. And if we could apply that to one strong common brand, I really believe this company has a great future. So we want to channel that passion and that energy into enterprising and profitable solutions by harnessing and focusing that enthusiasm, giving everyone, it's been marvellous the last 2 days, to share this rebranding with the staff. At Level 2 yesterday, we gathered together about 200 of the staff, and suddenly they feel part of something bigger than Bellevue Living, something bigger even than Grace. They felt part of a wider family with a true future. And if we can harness that energy, then we can expect some true innovations. We can expect to take the initiative that people have, the imagination that they demonstrate, apply some industry and hard work to that, and achieve some stellar results. So we come to branding the company whose ideology is as I've described. Branding is really about helping an organization answer 4 what I call big little questions. Who are you? What do you do? How do you do that in a way that is different and special? And where are you going? And try this, members of the press, when you're with CEOs. Ask them in the elevator, and you answer the 4 big little questions. Who are you? What do you do? How do you do it? And where are you going? Really tricky. It's why we call them the 4 big little questions. So today, we know exactly who Harold Frere is, isn't it? Family and sugar. We've known that forever. Problem. Tomorrow, however, by going through this exercise of vision, purpose and values, we've answered those questions. And inspirationally, we know what we do. We're here to cultivate resources for a better future. We know how we do it, by adhering and believing and living our values. And we also know where we're going. We're going to move from reputable to relevant. We're going to move from being establishment to being more enterprising, from being about old money to exploring new horizons. In short, going from being good, hopefully, to great. So given all of that, who should we be tomorrow? Not Harold Freer. So we need a new name. And the point of this image is to say that really a name is only a handle. There are too many names in Mauritius that are only handles. There's no case behind them. What we've determined through this process, why it's taken 6 months, is to make sure that the case is full of good stuff, that there really is a strategy in there, that there is an ideology in there, so that the handle has something behind it. Now we looked for names in 4 different territories, and don't worry, I'm not going to take you through them more laboriously now, but just to say it was an extensive survey to find the right name. And often these are very difficult processes, part art, part science, very difficult to get coherence and agreement between members of the board, yet alone members of the company. But actually not in this instance. And I think it's because we'd done this preparatory work that actually when the right name came before us, it was obvious. But we looked at finding names that described the asset base of Harold Freer, the land from which it prospers. We looked at its approach towards doing business. We dug into that vision of sustainable development in cultivating resources. We also looked at its custodial role in the economy. Guardianship is another source of names. But the decision we took, having surveyed all 4 in some detail, was to mine the territory of the asset. It seemed to us there was something fundamental about that. Very simply, by way of introduction to the name, we considered the group as a bank, but not a financial services bank, rather a land bank. Harold Freer owns great land, and in fact that land is the bedrock from which it has prospered and will continue to prosper. What we loved about the land is that it's so transgenerational. It's been there long before any of us were, and it will be long after we've gone. It somehow represents that intergenerational long-termism of the group. And, given the relevance of the diversification that will come, it's actually not about one operation or the other. It's bigger than anything you do. It's more fundamental. So we had a short list of names from across all of those, and actually 4 within that territory of the asset. And so we had to make a decision, had to make a selection. So just to give you an insight into some of the criteria that we used, we asked, did it fit? Did it, like a suit of clothes, did it feel right? Did it feel right to the leadership? Did it feel right to the management and to the staff? But also, remember what I said about IBL, CIEL, GML, HFL, this sort of conglomeration around sheep all following in the same direction. We determined not to do that. This is a different group, let us think different, let us speak different. So we wanted to be distinctive, we wanted to stand out from the crowd, and we wanted something short. We know what you lot in the media are like, you always contract things, British Airways, never called British Airways, BA. Route Monradier, never that, GML. So we wanted something that couldn't be contracted. A real proper name that you guys couldn't put into 3 initials, yeah? So a real name, short name, but something you could pronounce. I'm working with Nayad at the moment. We'll be hearing about that early next month. And that's a great name in French. Not in English, though. No one can say it. The tour operators in the UK call it Naegi or something. So you need something that works, especially as these guys are intending to go overseas. So we have to think international. We need something that you could register. Names aren't just names, they're trademarks these days. There's goodwill and equity that is built in them, and we have to be able to protect that. And then it's got to be something people like, and that's the hardest one. We always joke about the chairman or the CEO's wife having the last say on these things, but there's some truth behind that, but actually it does need to be likable. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to the new name for Harold Freer, which is terra. Latin, meaning the earth. You couldn't put it more simply. And the thing about a great name is it is simple and it's true. And it's rooted as the company is. It's about the matter of the land, not the acreage or the extent of it. It's about the substance of the land. It is about the land within which those deep roots are planted and from which that growth will emerge. It's a word that's passed into English. We talk about territory. It is a word you recognize in French, la terre, le terroir, and so on and so forth, and therefore it speaks both to Franco and Anglophone audiences. The official name of the company that will be listed will be Terra Mauritia Limited, but it will trade as Terra. So no TML, please. Terra. That's the name of the company. The name is accompanied by a claim, because we didn't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We wanted to retain and bring forward the best of the past. So Terra is for the future from 1838. So what we're saying is that actually for all of that time we've been about the future. That's why we're still here. So unlike MCB, who I think were born in the same year, who do their synths, we're not boasting about the synths. We're bragging about the future. We're about cultivating resources for the future. We're about a world in which sustainable development is what matters to us. So for the future from 1838. We have a vision of that future. We have a role to play in that future. We describe that through our vision and our purpose. And so finally, what will it look like? Well, the Terra logo will be this. It's a word mark. It is a logo type that is in fact the symbol. There will be no accompanying symbol. It is simple, it is bold, and it is modern. And you may recognize that the letter forms are being cut off at the bottom there. That's to demonstrate that the word Terra is itself rooted in the ground from which it was born. It is growing up from the land that gave it its birth. Of course, there are typefaces that go with that, and you'll see that in some of the materials that we'll distribute at the end. Of course, there's a colour palette, and we didn't have to look too far for our inspiration, but of course, to the land after which we have named the brand. The burgundy of the soil, the burgundy colour that we find in the sugarcane at certain times of the year, the deep grey that is the volcanic basalt. So the very matter of the land has given us our inspiration for the colour palette. And then looking further afield, the tan of the beaches, the aquamarine of the sea, and the bright green of the leaves. When you look into the theory of these colours, there are some beautiful things that come forward. Burgundy is about prosperity and excellence, creativity and distinction. The grey is a secure colour. It talks about being grounded. What a gift that was. We didn't make this up. That deep grey symbolises being grounded. Terra is all about arising from the ground. The tan is approachable, the aqua is calming, and the green is restful. So a lovely suite of colours to help give some personality to this new brand. And the final element in the vocabulary of the new identity is the photography. We commissioned Guy Neveling, who's a South African photographer based in Cape Town, to come down to Mauritius a few weeks ago to shoot different perspectives of the Terra, to look at the land in different ways, to make some of those images and insights part of the vocabulary with which this brand will speak. Now, I spoke earlier about this diversity and the fact that the whole needs to add up to more than the sum of the parts. And so we've taken the opportunity to consolidate and make more coherent the architecture of this brand. So there will, for example, be no more Bellevue Milling. It will now be known as Terra Milling, but will trade as Terra. So we're putting as much emphasis as possible on the corporate brand of Terra. Wherever possible, the activity has been renamed Terra. So all the boxes that you see in black on that organogram, I'm sure Lars will provide you with a copy of this chart, will trade as Terra. So we're building, for the first time in the history, a true corporate brand. It's a bit like companies like Procter & Gamble and Unilever and Nestle. For many years they traded under their brands like Dove or Kit Kat. But increasingly they've realized the importance of having a strong parent brand. So now you see Nestle on the chocolate. You see Unilever on the Dove. You see Procter & Gamble on the Timothée shampoo. And we're doing the same thing. We're building the Terra brand. However, there will be some exceptions. But where there is a need for a sub-brand, my friend Nikolai here is the leader of CTBB, we're renaming that Terra Gen. So it's the generation part of Terra. It's its own thing, but it's now part more clearly of the Terra family. Grays was an exception. It's a powerful business brand in Mauritius, but we've brought it one step closer to the family by rewriting its logo type in the same typeface as terra. So Grays and Terra Gem will be part of terra, they'll be endorsed as part of terra. Again, trying to build an understanding in the business community that these different parts of the group do add up to a whole. Bernard here is the managing director of Sagittaire. He's the guy who had to put up with the least change. So we have Sagittaire. And then some of you will be aware and write about the charitable activities of the group through the Fondation Harper. And that will forthwith be known as the Terra Foundation. So we're leveraging off this Terra brand wherever possible. Subject to the shareholders' approval on the 23rd, you will start to see in the media for which you write the communications campaign breaking. Now, these are not final executions, but will give you an idea of the way that this brand will talk when all of the different elements come together. So for the future, from 1838, Terra, it's in cane, it's in power, it's in brands, it's in property, and it makes investments. Very simply describing for the first time the whole. You'll see different executions of different types of media. Sometimes we'll vary the message. Actually talk about our purpose, talk about our mission. So striking, simple, bold, modern, and new Harold brand. At a divisional level, we might run a campaign like this. This is for Terra Gem, from generation to generation. So it's a play. Two things going on there. Long-termism, turning bagasse into energy. 15% of Mauritius' power requirements supplied by Terra Gem. This could be one for Grays. A little piece of copy introducing the role that Grays plays in this economy. Pioneer distiller, an exporter of cane products, and an importer of international luxury brands. All about living deluxe. And this could be a slightly cheeky one where we reference one of Grays' brands without actually showing the bottle, of course. So I'm going to leave you now. It's just one last execution for the foundation, giving people a solid start in life. A lot of the money goes to children and the underprivileged.